Understanding is one of 7 gifts which are listed traditionally as being of the Holy Spirit. The number 7, when used in the Bible, indicates completion, fullness, or fulfillment. In the Bible, numbers can be taken literally, as when we learn, for example, that a man and a woman had 6 sons. But just as often, the numbers are symbolic, and their use teaches something or reveals a truth that might otherwise have lain hidden and undiscovered amongst the details of the story. When we modern people use numbers, we tend to be much more precise in their use, much less symbolic. Let's take an example. You've probably learned that there are 7 gifts of the Holy Spirit given to us in baptism, sealed and affirmed for us in the sacrament of confirmation, and then made available for us to draw on all through life to strengthen us. These gifts are the tools we need in order to live the Christian life. And you've probably learned that these 7 gifts of the Holy Spirit are wisdom, knowledge, understanding, courage, right judgment, reverence, and wonder and awe in God's presence. We can take this number 7 to be a mathematical truth, revealing to us that there are indeed 7 gifts of the Holy Spirit. And this would be a wonderful truth, revealing God's generosity and providence in offering these gifts to guide, sustain, and inform our path through life. There is another way that we could take this number, the 7 gifts of the Holy Spirit. What if the number 7 really does retain its biblical sense of fulfillment, completion, or fullness? Then, when we name the number of gifts of the Holy Spirit as being 7, we would not so much be numbering them as we be making a statement of faith, proclaiming that the gifts of our God are so bounteous, so many, so plentiful, and so present that even God can be said to have poured forth these wondrous gifts into our lives. There aren't only 7 gifts of the Holy Spirit, then. There are many, many, many gifts of the Holy Spirit. And furthermore, these gifts are not held in the hands of a stingy God who measures them out to us in cupfuls. These gifts are poured out, rained out by a God of bounty. Sometimes the gifts are obvious to us. Sometimes we may have to look for the gift or the blessing, but it is surely there. Even more wondrous, these gifts of the Holy Spirit are not one size fits all. These gifts are offered to each of us when we need them, as we need them, and for as long as we need them. The truth, I think, is that we have often thought about the gifts of the Holy Spirit, in fact, as gifts from the Holy Spirit to me. What if we fine-tune this a bit? What if these gifts are the gifts of God's very self, of the Holy Spirit? What if the wonder is that they are God's call to us? They reveal to us a little bit of what God is like, and they point the way then to a way of becoming more like the God in whose image and likeness we are created, live, move, and have our being. So that being said, what can we say about the Holy Spirit's gift of understanding? In the Gospel of Mark, chapter 3, verses 27 to 35, we hear these words proclaimed. Jesus went on with his disciples to the villages of Caesarea Philippi, and on the way he asked his disciples, "Who do people say that I am?" And they answered him, "John the Baptist, and others Elijah, and still others one of the prophets." He asked them, "But who do you say that I am?" Peter answered him, "You are the Messiah." And he sternly ordered them not to tell anyone about him. Then he began to teach them that the Son of Man must undergo great suffering and be rejected by the elders, the chief priests, and the scribes, and be killed, and after these days rise again." He said all this quite openly. And Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. But turning and looking at his disciples, he rebuked Peter and said, "Get behind me, Satan. For you are setting your mind not on divine things, but on human things." He called the crowd with his disciples and said to them, "If any want to be my followers, then let them deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For those who want to save their life will lose it, and those who lose their life for my sake and for the sake of the gospel will save it." Understanding can mean many things. Let's have a look at some of the meanings of the word understanding. One can be said to understand the weather if one is able to predict and give an explanation of some of its features, patterns, warning signs, and so on. A psychiatrist might be said to understand another person's anxieties if he or she knows that person's anxieties and their causes and can give useful advice on how to cope with the anxiety, leading to a greater ability to manage the environment and live a healthy and productive life. A person can be said to understand a command if he or she knows who gave it, what's expected by that person, and whether the command is legitimate, and whether one understands the speaker. One might show that one understands a reasoning, an argument, or a language if one can summarize the content of a message. One might exhibit that one truly understands a mathematical concept if one can solve problems using it, especially problems that are not similar to what's been seen before. But how do I show that I truly understand another person? The truth is that I can never fully understand another person without getting inside their skin and seeing the world through their eyes. God knows this. God gets it, that no person can fully understand the life or the situation or the viewpoint of another unless one gets inside their skin and really seeks, as St. Francis of Assisi said, to understand rather than be understood. God's gift of understanding is so immense, so loving, so complete, that God sent His very Son into the world to take on our flesh and to experience everything that we experience, except, of course, sin. Imagine such great love, a love that compels me to see the world or to be able to give voice to a problem or express a concern at least as clearly as that person themselves could describe it. This other-centered love and the desire and constant search to share the perspective of another person, the beloved, is the heart of God's gift of understanding. The truth is that I cannot understand unless I first love. So if I look at you with judgment, or see you as a problem to be fixed, if I've made up my mind already, there is no understanding in my approach to you. If I look at you as the sum of all your past mistakes, then I do not see the real heart of you. I have no understanding. So in the gospel passage that we just heard proclaimed, Jesus has a clear understanding of the road before him. He knows that his actions and his teaching could quite possibly result in his death. And he wants to make sure that his disciples know that this might be their future as well, if they remain yoked to him as their master and teacher. So Jesus asks them, "Who do you say that I am?" Peter's answer is incomplete. "You are the Messiah." He's right, of course, but he's probably envisioning in his mind's eye a Messiah surrounded by all the trappings of glory. He's probably not thinking of a Messiah who washes the feet of his disciples, who dies on a cross as a common criminal. Jesus spells all of this out for Peter and the others. In doing it, Peter spells out for you and for me our path home. To be a follower of Jesus is to fully understand that there is a cost to being a disciple. And then we embrace the cost willingly because we love and are loved by the one who offers us the challenge. You and I may not be killed for our faith, but we may be ridiculed. We may be excluded from certain groups or organizations. We might be thought odd or delusional or antiquated. Others may not understand. How do we become understanding then? We become understanding by practicing understanding ways, by doing understanding things. We become understanding by seeking to understand not the way things work, but where God is in the midst of it all. Understanding is God's way. It's part of the inner bank account that God has bequeathed to you and to me as individuals, and it's part of the joint bank account that all of God's people share. The more I take out of this bank account, the more there is to draw on. It grows by being used. It's like a spiritual muscle. It grows and becomes stronger by being exercised. So today, I urge you to get out and get some exercise. Exercise your spiritual muscles. Think of a person in your life for whom you have limited understanding, sympathy, or empathy. Call or email that person and invite them for tea, for a friendly conversation. Understanding is built over time together. Perhaps today you can practice this gift of the Holy Spirit by listening to that other person and by seeking to understand rather than to be understood.